Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Big Home Ed Conversations podcast. I am Ashley Vanerio, and I'm here with a special episode today. This is one of our book club episodes, and we're going to discuss The 4-Hour School Day by Durenda Wilson. And let me start by saying, I didn't know much about this before diving in. Honestly, I was interested in it because the title was on trend with the other books out there. All these books about the 2-day work week, the 4-hour work week. And this book takes that same approach where less is more and you can be efficient in what you're doing at home in a way that you can't in a traditional school setting. Overall, with this book, I will say I was pleasantly surprised. I was surprised by how encouraging it was. And I think it offers practical advice for those who are new to home education. Now, before I get too far, I do want to give you a heads up. This book is very faith-based. The author writes openly from her Christian perspective. She quotes the Bible, she talks about her relationship with God, and that's really woven throughout. I didn't realize that going in, and I know for some people that's going to be a selling point, while for others it might be a little off-putting. But here's the thing. Even if you're not religious, there is still so much in this book that applies to all home educators. You can skip the faith parts or adapt them to your own worldview because the core message about homeschooling is incredibly relatable. The author is a homeschooling mom of 8, so she is definitely in a position to share her expertise here. Her youngest was 12 when she wrote this, and her oldest was 30. So she's lived through every stage of homeschooling, from babies to toddlers, all the way through high school and launching kids into adulthood. And that expertise really comes through. She's not speaking in theory. She's sharing what actually worked for her family, what she struggled with, and what she's learned along the way. One of her first big points that she makes, and I loved this, is about the amount of time homeschooling actually takes. So many of us, especially when we're new, feel like we have to recreate school at home. You know, the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. grind, sitting at the table, plowing through subject after subject. But Durenda reminds us that learning at home is way more efficient. You are not managing 30 kids. You're not spending half the day on classroom management. You can actually tailor the learning to your child, which means you can get more done in less time. And that's where the whole 4-hour school day idea comes in. But she's clear that this doesn't mean parents should be hovering over their kids every second. Homeschooling, in her view, isn't about control. It's about creating an environment where our kids can grow at their own pace, they become independent thinkers, and really just discover who they are. I found that reminder so refreshing, especially in a world where it's just easy to get caught up in comparison. Social media, Instagram, all of that, or to feel like we're not doing enough, which is also, oh my gosh, so easy to kind of fall into. And of course, no conversation about homeschooling would be complete without that one question we all get. But what about socialization, right? I loved her answer. If you read anything, read this chapter, the one about the sacred cow in her book, okay? I would quote it if it wasn't copyright infringement. So go look it up. I loved her answer. She makes this distinction between socialization, which is usually about fitting into a peer group, often through conformity, and socializing, which is about actually knowing how to interact with people of all ages. And let's be honest, homeschool kids get tons of practice with that. They're in the world with us. They go to the dentist. They're talking to the neighbors. They're chatting with the person at the post office. They're asking questions at the grocery store, right? They're not confined to one room with 30 kids their exact same age. I just thought the way she framed it was really helpful, especially if you're looking for a kind and approachable way to answer that question when it comes up. Another theme she keeps coming back to is slowing down, not cramming our schedules so full that there's no room to breathe, not letting comparison drive our choices. Instead, focusing on building consistency, creating rhythms our kids can count on, and most importantly, nurturing our relationships with them. I personally found this really helpful when she just underlined that rhythms and a dependable schedule is really core to creating security for children so that they can then launch into their passions and explore and ask questions because they have this really solid foundation. Because I personally like to fly by the seat of my pants. I like to last minute go to the museum or last minute join that group for whatever outing they're doing that day. And I often will do that at the sacrifice of the schedule. And so I think that her focus on respecting the place that you are at currently in your homeschooling journey and really just understanding that consistency and rhythm is important, that just hit home for me. That was a big reminder for me. It was a big takeaway. She talks a lot about not letting schoolwork steal the joy out of family life, which I know is something, again, I'm reminding myself of often, right? Family comes first. The book itself is organized in a way that makes it pretty easy to pop in and out of. She starts with the why behind homeschooling, but then she moves into the practical early years, middle years, high school, and even college and beyond. She shares stories from her own kids who each took different paths. Some went to college, some didn't. And she's really honest about how those choices played out. Again, I found this really encouraging. Each kid followed their own path and seemed very fulfilled and happy with where they are in their life and careers. Another thing I also appreciated is how she talks about following your child's passions. Even if your child is obsessed with something, whether it's history, art, science, something totally niche, let them dive into it. That interest might turn into a career, or most likely it won't. Either way, it's building focus, confidence, and a love of learning. She also admits that, like many of us, she doesn't remember much of what she learned in school, whether that's in science or history, despite getting good grades. I got straight A's and can barely remember what I learned in high school science and history. It's only my postgraduate self-education, self-learning that has stuck with me. So why do we force kids to memorize content they'll forget? Instead, help them to learn how to learn and trust that curiosity is going to lead them deeper when it matters. And I know it has for me. So I feel like that's just some proof right there. I think one of the reasons this book works so well is because the author is just so encouraging. She's not wagging her finger. She's not telling you you're doing it wrong. She's saying, here's what worked for us. Here's why you can trust yourself. And here's why you don't need to panic if your homeschooling doesn't look like someone else's. Stop looking at Instagram. It's the kind of book that if you're just starting out, it will give you confidence. And if you've been at this for a while, it's a great reminder to just breathe, to step back, to revisit your focus, your why, what matters to you as a family, and go from there. I also think it's the kind of book that I would recommend giving to a skeptical family member. It's not harsh. It's very approachable. And when you have a relative or someone you're close to, I mean, don't just give it to strangers on the street, but like if it's someone you're close to and they tend to ask the questions about socialization always. And if your kids are ever going to go into college, are you going to homeschool in high school, right? This book is written so kindly that it will help to gently answer those questions without you having to do it one more time, because we all know we're old pros by this point. But most importantly, you don't get defensive, because I know I sort of shut down anymore at this point. Like if someone's asking me about socialization, I immediately am annoyed. And I think it's just the nature of being asked so many times, right? It is what it is. So let this book say it for you. At the end of the day, I'd say that the 4-hour school day is not so much a step-by-step guide on homeschooling, but more of a really big encouraging pep talk. It's definitely inspiration. It's part practical wisdom. It's part challenge to trust yourself as a parent. The author really makes the case that you don't need a teaching degree, you don't need to know it all, and you definitely don't need to run yourself ragged to give your kids a solid education. What you need is time with them, consistency, and the courage to let them learn in a way that fits who they are. And that's hard. It's really easy said, not easily done. Okay, to wrap this up, I was really pleasantly surprised with this book. It's one that I will be keeping on my shelf and definitely recommending to anyone who's either curious about homeschooling or feeling a little bit shaky about their decision to start homeschooling. If you've read it, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please, please share them with me. If you had a chance to read it, I want to hear it. If you just want to comment on some of the things you heard from this podcast, I'd love to hear that as well. As I look to our book for the next book club book, I am going to read Hunt, Gather, Parent: What Ancient Cultures Can Teach Us About the Lost Art of Raising Happy, Helpful Little Humans. It should be good. I'm going to aim to have another short summary podcast like the one we've heard today. I'm trying to get these out weekly, but life gets in the way. So these bonus episodes are just going to come when they come. So hang on. Hopefully this gives you a week or two to catch up or read it if you want to. Thank you for sticking with me, especially since we did not have Kelly here for a little variety for your ears, a little back and forth. Thanks for listening to me explain why I think you should read The 4-Hour School Day. And I look forward to hearing your feedback on this book and on Hunt, Gather, Parent. Thanks, everyone. You've been listening to the Big Home Ed Conversations podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Big Home Ed Podcast for updates. We'll be back again soon for another book club episode. But don't forget to check out our special summer episodes, Get Your Head Straight to Home Ed. See you soon.